I'm Kristy Deetz, and you're watching For Art's Sake. I'm Kristy Deetz, and Professor Emerita from University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. And I think I've taught for maybe 37 years in a variety of places, but did end my career there. But now I get to focus on my own artwork and curating my own artwork, which is fun. I'll get started and talk a little bit about my artwork that's in the exhibition here. I'll begin with this painting. This began the series. There are actually two series in the exhibition. One is Through the Veil, which plays a little bit with the ideas that are in Through the Looking Glass, the stories of Alice in Wonderland that we all know. But I have just to divert a little bit, I have a long standing interest in fabric and drapery in artwork and how that is used. I began my investigation with European canonical painting and had a series of work that explores particularly canonical painting from the Renaissance time period. And I constructed paintings that used fabric and drapery that alluded to those paintings but without any specific gender association. So in a way it was like a deconstruction of those paintings from a perhaps feminist perspective, and then also inserting some autobiographical things. So that has gone through many evolutions where I started to focus on the wrinkles and folds of fabric and how the wrinkles and folds, I maybe would wrinkle or fold an image from art history. So when you look around the gallery, you'll see, if you can look closely enough at the wrinkles and folds, you might see another painting from art history into the wrinkles and folds. And this painting, the first one in the series, in the very background, you'll see Piero della Francesca's resurrection image. And this work really shifts a lot from the work that came before it, which was more minimal, but had a lot of wrinkled cloth in it, and alluded to a number of art historical things in painting. But in this painting, I got obsessed with this image of a Victorian Easter rabbit that was on a Victorian Easter card. I'm not sure why, but it just held my attention. And I then went on a tour in Italy of the Piero della Francesca Trail, looking at all of Piero della Francesca's paintings and frescoes around Italy. And I did see this one painting of the Resurrection by Piero. And it's actually a somewhat smaller painting, but not quite as small as I've made it here. And after coming back from that trip, I thought of all different kinds of resurrections, and what does that mean on multiple levels. There can be personal resurrections, there are religious resurrections, there can be art that resurrects other artwork. So here the Easter rabbit is kind of facing off Ugrasura, the Hindu demon god that actually swallows people. And then in the background there's a Luca Signorelli cloud that has a face in it. So that idea of hidden images or references to art that references other artwork. And you'll see other wrinkles and folds that pick out Piero della Francesca's painting. But I start with the title, and then I go from there, and I work up a sketch in Photoshop. But all the fabric is done by wrinkling and folding the fabric, and then I light it and I paint from observation, and then I move the sketch in and out of that. So I'm giving you a lot of information right at the get-go. So this was the beginning of the series, and when I get to the end, I go down to painting through a magnifying glass. So there's a lot of tiny details using a very small brush. So this was the beginning of the series, and I love challenging myself with color and, can I actually do this technically? So that's pretty much where the series got started. And also, I'm playing with where is the viewer in these. So if I move over to this one, this was one of the earlier ones in the series too. This is a painting of Duchamp's chess players. He's a modern artist, modernist artist, and his work is a lot about sort of thinking and making art, and where does it come from? So his paintings actually, you're seeing it, a reverse of it, as though you were behind it. So I'll oftentimes flip images, and the viewer will have to think, if they know that painting, where do they stand in position to the painting? Are they in front of the painting, behind the painting? Again, kind of like Alice in Wonderland. Where is she? How big is she? And here another rabbit from a Victorian card is painting an Easter egg, and that's being swept up into the game of painting. So a lot of times artists think of, when they engage with the history of art making, like painting has a long history, what is the game? And how are you engaging in the game? So these are a lot about art history and painting. And then as they move along, I insert more like personal content into them. This was a little further along in the series, and I'm probably playing with my own history as an artist. The ceramic creatures, or these creatures that are in the middle of the painting, this is entitled Glad You're Here. I was thinking of bringing those creatures back. It was a whole series of sculptural pieces, and they're looking at an atomic bomb that's dropping. So the content in it, I wrinkled the fabric to almost like have an explosion in the center. And these little kitsch objects from different sources are in the environment. My niece painted the little creatures at the top of the mountains. I was thinking of our associations with atomic weapons and weaponry and sort of killing each other out. And this says, glad you're here. Are you glad you're here? And are you being photographed by the little rabbit, the birthday rabbit there? And are you glad you're here? It's really a question. So this one over here is C. Brown, and there's a painter called Cicely Brown, who is an abstract painter, contemporary abstract expressionist painter, and her paintings really play with the sort of male abstract expressionist machismo and turn it on its head. And I'm alluding to C. Brown is like a little note of C. Cicely Brown's paintings, and playing with some of the things that I see in her paintings. And a little bit of this is a card from Valentine's Day card. And there's some sort of maybe subtle, not so subtle things about Valentine's Day, and the rabbit is melting and within a pool of chocolate. So I'll move over to this wall. Here's some other images. I'll try to go through these a little bit more quickly. This one is Devouring and Reconstructing Kali, and I was looking at Persian and Hindu miniature painting and playing with those. There's a hidden face in the mountain, and I exaggerated the topography and changed it a little bit. And Kali, the goddess of destruction, is in this. And this is a woodcut. So oftentimes there are visual puns in these paintings. So this woodcut of a rabbit is cut in half, and this is what has sprouted out. And these are attributes of the goddess Kali. And over here, this painting is Do You Hear What I Hear? I started to include a character called Kitty Boy with a lot of the rabbits that you see in this. And Kitty Boy is based on my buff tabby Bingley. And they're sort of companions, friends that travel through these paintings and started to have adventures. So this is entitled "Do You Hear What I Hear" off of the Christmas song, which has a kind of religious association. And here are the nuns genuflecting to this God, and transforming, or is it vice versa? What's really happening? What's being heard? What's being said? As communication on many levels can be very complicated. Up here, somnambulists are sleepwalkers in an environment that's maybe a bit post-apocalyptic, and the rabbit, kitty boy, and their companion, Bo Doggy, are in the landscape and wearing onesies with kind of almost like masked, hollow eyes, wandering. Somnambulists are sleepwalkers, so it's a little bit of a scary image. Over here, both sides now, it's the Joni Mitchell song, Clouds Illusions, I recall, and probably more personal content, thinking about actions and restraining actions, or being dominated in one's behavior being controlled or dominated, and what situations have that, and then where it seems like something's very okay or smiling. Someone might seem like they're smiling on the outside. You never know what people are going through, and that is a puzzle in a sense, like the puzzles in all of these paintings. People are complicated, and it's good to listen and be sympathetic when possible. Rabbit and Kitty Men, the fabric of meaning. I think there's often environmental undertone in these, which is kind of what what I'm focusing on now. And my paintings are very different, although using some of these techniques. But in this one, Rabbit and Kitty Boy Men, the fabric of meaning. This is Rabbit and Kitty Boy as St. George, and instead of fighting the dragon, they are sewing up the fabric of meaning that has ruptured. And this is another Indian miniature, I believe, in the background. And so it brings together things that unlikely come together, and playing with meaning and different sources in art history. And here the needle is mightier than the sword. So in this painting, Where's Kitty Boy? This is a Chinese landscape painting in the background, and Kitty Boy is there as the Zen sage, and he's fishing. And the rabbit on carrot legs, sort of a symbol of desire, is desperately looking for Kitty Boy and being very frantic and trying to find him and can't. And I guess there's a message there. And in this Chinese painting, the whole fabric is unfolding. I guess maybe a idea of thinking of the brevity of life and importance of connections. This was an important painting for this series. I think this is when I first introduced Kitty Boy, and he's on the back of Rabbit, and they're escaping the postmodern radar. These are definitely paintings in a postmodern vein. You know, it's a bit ironic, perhaps they didn't escape anything, did they? I don't know. But this is a Georgia O'Keeffe painting of clouds in the sky that's moving in and out of the fabric. And that's our buff Tabby Bingley. Give him a little credit. He's my husband's best friend. Or, I mean, vice versa. Actually, my husband's his valet. But, and then this painting, Ecce Homo, this Behold the Man. And this probably goes into a little more personal direction. In the back, there are images of Christ on cloth called sudarium. And those are taken from a medieval painting. And this was my father who had a stroke. And I was trying to depict how that might feel internally, and how you maybe would struggle being able to communicate or not be able to communicate, and giving that some sort of depiction, some sort of voice when it can't be voiced. Going on to some of the other paintings in the series of Through the Veil, that's part of Threads, Folds, and Rabbit Holds, a traveling exhibition. Here we have Maître Monet on a beam. I'm probably butchering the French, but that's pretty close, which is putting Monet into the abyss. The idea in postmodern theory of things being an endless reflection, a hall of mirrors, if you will. And this alludes to Monet's painting of the boats at the river, and it just escapes me the name of the where this place was. It was a popular place that a lot of the Impressionists would paint. So the Impressionist painters were all painting the same scene, sort of mirroring each other. I think a lot because of the reflections and colors that were there, and the broken brush strokes. They were also experimenting with that. So that's what you're seeing in the boats that are in the painting, that are actually going in and out of a blue wrinkled fabric. So I painted everything I didn't paint anything that was this blue color. I left that open so that fabric would show through. So I'm interacting with the ideas of the Impressionist painters, and then here's a little Buddhist rabbit whose head is a mirror of himself, and then he's being mirrored into the water. I think it's just kind of fun and amusing, to be honest. And this one is through Dr. Caligari's cabinet. There's a movie, a German expressionist movie called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It's a wonderful movie if you ever get a chance to see it. It's in black and white, and all of the environment has been created through, it looks like giant pieces of cardboard that have been cut out, or wood, and it's black and white. Just a beautiful German expressionist movie. I think it's probably influenced a lot of film noir and other genres and movies. But I'm alluding to, this is a set from where Caesar, who's being controlled by Dr. Caligari to actually kill people, is wandering through this this long hallway, which is kind of an illusion, but a very effective one in terms of how it was constructed. And here Ganesh is blowing on his flute to sort of calm that excessive desire to kill, and it seems as though perhaps Caesar is awakening as a rabbit, but it's a little questionable. And there are other allusions here. This is from a little Abner comic of the cloud that would rain on, I think Spellsfunk was the character's name, and he was always gray until the cloud ran away, and he didn't want to be, he always wanted the cloud to go away so he wouldn't be gray, and then it did, and he missed the cloud and had it come back. So a little play with different allusions, and I'm appropriating from all sources: high culture, popular culture, and many things, illustration, and including them in there. And that's one of the things I liked about this series, but I could do anything. I could move in any direction, and it would work. This one is assisted living, a kind of companion portrait to that of my father. And I remember when my mother was in her last years, she said, "Oh, I don't feel very attractive." So, and I get, now that I'm getting older, I kind of get that. But here I'm putting her in this fancy garb, and again, thinking of, there's a little bit of humor about it. It's almost like one of those paintings in a ghost story where the eyes are someone behind the painting, looking at whoever's passing through. But again, that feeling of, I guess, assisted living. You're in a closed environment, and again, not being able to really speak for yourself. And the paintings over here, this is Hank's Rebirth Dilemma. After my father passed, I made a painting where I thought of, it's a tribute to his life, all of the things that he was when he was alive, or aspects of his personality, or is it what he might become in his next life? And this is when I began to introduce embroidery into the paintings, or the illusion of embroidery, which carries into the next series after this, and which I'll talk about in a little bit here. This one is Cable or Dish, and the image of, from a Renaissance painting of Joseph and Mary paying homage to the Christ child in the nativity scene is embedded in all the wrinkles if you look closely. I was kind of thinking of organized religion, or, and any kind of thing that has a power structure to it, and how it can control thinking and actions. And where is that line between what is positive about that and what is a negative thing about that? And the importance of thinking for ourselves. And the pixelated rabbit here has another association, I believe, that you might even connect to all of these scenarios. In these two paintings, this one is entitled Targeting Twayman's Rabbit. Again, I'm in conversation with a number of contemporary painters or painters from the past, outsider artists, popular illustrators, folk artists. They're all moving in and out of these paintings. The hummingbird comes from a science illustration, and it's way in front of the painting, although the layers of space kind of fluctuate a little bit. And this comes from an observed fabric, again, that I light and hang on the wall and then paint. So most every painting, once I get the digital sketch made, begins with the illusion of wrinkles and folds, and then I move the images in and out of that. Luke Toymans is a contemporary artist, and I love to find artists, whatever they are, or writers, poets, scientists, that challenge my thinking, that make me think in a new way. And when I learned about Toyman's work, my work is very labor intensive and usually takes a long time to make, although every so often I switch that and go into something that's very short. Because I think changing up how you make work helps you move in new directions that you wouldn't necessarily anticipate. But Toymans creates paintings that he gives himself just an hour to do. And I thought, wow, that is just so interesting, because they're fairly complicated. But he has a facile hand, and his paintings move in a variety of directions too, and I like the social content and political content that's often behind them. So in the background, you'll see a rabbit that actually Toymans painted that was through a television screen. So again, it's an image through a screen, and then my image is through another kind of screen, and then another sort of image from another kind of source, that kind of layering. And there's a pair of lips in the center. And I guess I was thinking of the power of words, the power of images, and also alluding to another painter who has this beautiful image of a hummingbird penetrating the lips of one of his images. Over here, four rabbits of the apocalypse, just kind of a visual pun, and they're determinately flying. I think these images also kind of remind you of brains and black holes and string theory, which when I'm painting the fabric, I go down to the strings that are in the fabric. I actually look at those, and that helps me describe the wrinkles and folds. It's kind of an obsession. Perhaps it's almost like a scientist looking very objectively at something versus things that are very intuitive and unknown, and that we can't understand, that are also part of our fabric of living, so to speak. Again, I think the paintings often have multi-sensory aspects to them. They're things that you can hear. And these sound lines here. Could you hear these rabbits rushing out of this spiral or into a spiral? What are the lips saying? They're multi-sensory things which I find interesting in terms of what they might suggest. And there are rhythms within the folds of the fabric that might even duplicate some sort of rhythm in music, if you want to think of many kinesthetic or synesthetic synthesis of the senses that are in the paintings. All right, so here we are at Through Darger's Eyes, and Darger, I guess I've heard it pronounced that way too. Henry Darger is an outsider artist, lived in the Chicago area, and I think his collage and drawing work really influenced contemporary drawing. And I find his work fascinating on all sort of levels. It's also kind of disturbing, to be really honest. And he controls sort of the bodies of these young girls. He called them the Vivian girls that have these adventures. So I both identify with how he creates adventures through making artwork and expresses different things. But you sort of wonder what all is behind it. And it always bothered me that the Vivian girls were under his hand and mind, in a sense. And he would mix genders. The Vivian girls weren't just female, they were both male and female, which in one sense is really liberating, but I felt sorry for the Vivian girls, to be really honest. So here I have the Vivian girls kind of taking over this comes from one of his collages. It's a close-up of it. And he was so imaginative. He'd put tails and wings, and they'd have battles, and very interesting, very interesting. So I'm thinking of the rabbit here as Darger, and he's looking at the viewer with a slightly perplexed look, and one of the Vivian girls is handing him, instead of them having penises attached to them without their consent, perhaps, here they're handing him a snake. Are they identifying what his sexuality is? And they're also changing the environment and causing different other things to happen. And kind of where's the line in all of this? It's interesting to contemplate. But I certainly, I think making art is about expressing, visual ideas in a powerful way. And I think as an artist, you're trying to share that, what you see, what you feel. And so this is sort of getting at problematic things, perhaps, but then also celebrating, I think, just the power of creating and how it can transform us and can transform others. Well, here we are in the next room in the Gertz Gallery that has all of the Holidays Unfolding series. And these paintings came after Through the Veil. Holidays Unfolding specifically plays with still life. Still life is a painting genre. Traditionally, I guess when the genres of painting were developed, still life was thought of as not as important as historical painting or religious painting. It was down further on the line, and oftentimes women engaged in that genre, I guess because they were allowed to, because it wasn't that important. But of course, things over time have changed. These paintings developed out of Through the Veil, and they used many of the same techniques. Here we'll see hanging cloth, again, that is done from observation, where I'll wrinkle and fold the cloth. And they oftentimes have very many layers of wrinkles and folds from previous layers. So in some ways, they're reflecting my own history, again, as a painter and the ideas that have been in previous paintings just by my touch of my hands that creates a structure that's used in the painting. Still life in French is nature morte, which means dead nature. So still life has a kind of double edge to it. It's objects from nature, fruits, things like that that are often on a table. But they're also they're sort of living things, but they're also on their way to dying. So still life, dead nature, has a kind of a double edge. It's always a kind of reminder of death. So these are not still at all. Holidays unfolding, they're very animated. Things are moving all the way around the paintings in unpredictable ways. So it plays with that genre. It's not still, it's very hide and seek, it's very unpredictable. Things are happening that you might not anticipate would happen, with tables turning upside down, things falling off tables in impossible ways, or floating off tables. And what pinned this down, I think, was I wanted to directly go at nostalgia. I think oftentimes in artwork, nostalgia is sort of frowned upon, as for a time beauty was. I think that's coming back. And nostalgia is too. The value of nostalgia, I think, to maybe deal with more complex or intense emotions. How do we use nostalgia to do that? And what is more intense in emotion than holidays? They can be really celebratory, or for others they can be really sad. So there's a really mix of things that can go on. And this was the very first painting in the series, and this is Christmas Rising. So all of them have an action verb in them, so that it takes away from that sort of still life. Something is happening, rising, falling, floating, all of those kinds of things. And the holiday, the American holiday that we associate with that. So I think the titles in all of my work are keys into the work, so I really invite the viewer to read the title beforehand and then look at the work, maybe go back to the title then again and contemplate how those two things are working. I know Lisa was going to bring in some art history images that are in a lot of the paintings, which I think is really smart curating, and again I'd like to say how smart I think the show is curated. When we come into gallery, I think oftentimes we think, oh wow, that looks neat, and it wouldn't look neat if some didn't know what they were doing. So I'd like to thank Lisa again. But here we have Christmas Rising, and this is a little bit like a Christmas carol. There's the ghosts, the rabbits as the ghosts of some kind of Christmas past rising. And in these paintings, I also have, I'll talk a little bit about the technical thing. I'm using intense observational painting, but also I sketch the idea in Photoshop, and then I transfer that to the painting surface. But each painting starts with actually a digital image of a painting that came through from a drapery series where I was sort of seriously engaged with European canonical painting that I mentioned earlier, and using the fabric that I would see in that and reconstructing the narratives of those paintings. So those are in the background of all of these paintings. And then it's my own image of my own painting, and then I manipulate it into a pattern. I have that pattern printed out from a company in California called DPI that prints them on silk, and the silk really maintains the integrity and crispness of the image. And I stretch that over the canvas, and then I begin painting on top of that. So I have the sketch, I'm always thinking about the colors and patterns and how that all works together with the content. And in a cartouche or an enclosed area, and that enclosed area can be a thought balloon, a speech balloon, or a Christmas tree here. This gives you the clue of what this painting, a detail of this painting that was used to construct the pattern. And this is what we're seeing here. And these paintings were done in oil and encaustic on wood. So it's a very different media that maybe adds to the textural quality of what's going on. And the little Christmas bulbs are reflecting the image here. In the cartouche, or the enclosed area, this is it's sometimes both hand-painted and also an image transfer, where I'm taking the painting and transferring it from a Xerox copy onto a gessoed surface. So these paintings have a lot of subtle highs and lows because I was transferring and I knew that that would build a topography up. There's the topography of in and out of the fabric. It's very subtle, and also illusionistic texture, a slight visual texture. The visual texture of the fabric that you see in the background. And then the transfer image is illusionistic in nature, but it's very smooth. But when I have to build up the gesso areas to transfer those, I started to think about, as I was going on, building up gessoed areas and the fabric areas. So some of them actually, if you look from the side, you see there's actually a thickness to all of those layers going on. And I think that that adds something to the textural play and hide and seek that's in the paintings. This painting is Easter falling. So instead of resurrecting as you think of Christ resurrecting from the cross, this is the opposite of that. Everything is falling in this painting. And this is an image that I used in Hank's Rebirth Dilemma. I actually painted that and photographed it and then made a transfer of it. So I'm transferring my own paintings just so that the detail would go down to where I wanted it to in terms of the other kinds of painting that were is in the work. And then this is an image transfer, and the pattern that comes from the paintings from the drapery series, and ending with a round of embroidery that embellishes all the surfaces. And you'll see flowers and other associations of the holiday or the season that are related to the holiday, and how those all mix together. This is a little bit further along in the series. This is probably one of the last ones. I'm using the character of the rabbit on Carrot's legs, the image of desire. And this is Flag Day transforming. And this actually sort of foreshadows how my work is going now, where I'm really moving into environmental themes. I have a series called Disrupted Gardens. And actually, I guess I could say a whole lot about that, but I'm going to develop that into a traveling show too. And instead of the characters that I draw, I'm actually making characters now that are sculptural and made from encaustic and natural objects and trash that I find on walks. But they're very anthropomorphic, and then I take those and I put them into the landscape where I'm walking by a river trail a lot with my husband, and then photographing those, and those are the images for the next series, Disrupted Gardens, which is that a fragile ecology and our place, our responsibility in it. They're sort of post-apocalyptic with characters that are maybe a transformation of Rabbit and Kitty Boy that crossed my mind. So here we have Rabbit holding a flag, not of nationalism, but a flag of sort of transformation and change and nature, and equal-sided, the equal-sided cross. And The rabbit, it's almost like sort of choices. The rabbit is turning away and of course getting hit by lightning, although it's a pretty dangerous environment where the table is being struck or destroyed, the land is being destroyed. And the flowers in this painting are all images of endangered species. And then the pattern that is made here came from an image of drapery, still life. It's also kind of about a cycle of life, the rotting pear and the new pears, and that kind of yin-yang, and transience and things like that. So there are repeated themes in my work. I suppose after making artwork for so long, you start to see those things as an artist, and you pull from them and you think about, well, what did it mean at this time period or at that age, and what is it meaning now? A lot of these became very political, and this is maybe the most political of things. Well, maybe one other one that's in here is sort of obviously political. A lot of these paintings were made during the Trump years and also during the pandemic. So you can see the influence of that kind of thing happening. So this is Independence Day cracking, and here you see the leader rabbit blowing his trumpet and with his power tie standing on a hot dog, and I was kind of punning off of George Washington crossing the Delaware, and the fabric, this is at the bottom of a table, this is like a river, but there are holes being knocked into it as things are exploding, and the flotilla of his followers perhaps, or just us, its followers, their boats all have bombs on them, so it doesn't look like a great scenario, does it? And there's some other allusions to previous paintings. This pattern was created through a painting called Hybrid Vigor, and there's little painted leaves that were in this pattern. And the idea of that one actually originally started as very different than the title that was called Losing the Green Line. And someone told me a story of how, this is just associations, I think. A lot of times as artists, things that are in the very back of our mind that we think about, and we don't really think that they're important, are extremely important. And it's learning how to grab those things and just say, that's important, and what can I do with it? But someone told me of how someone told them, as a golfer, beginning golfer in their teens, they were able to see a green line from the ball to the cup. And they said, someone told them, this person told this other person that an older adult that they were with, I can see a green line there, can you see a green line? And the person said, the older adult said, no, you can't see that, there's no way. Well, actually that's something that happens. People can see a green line, either in their imagination or somehow they're able to see a green line directly from the ball to the hole. But that person wasn't able to see that line when that person said, no, you can't see it. They can no longer see it. And I think, oh, gosh, how often does that happen? That someone tells us something and then we believe it. So as a culture, what are we listening to? What thoughts are we letting people put into our heads? So I think that painting holds all of those things. And I hope it communicates to the viewers and that we can all stop and think of both the positive and negative of things that we value, and sometimes the precariousness of what you might think is important, and is it really? This is April Fooling, and here we have a woodcut, actually, a medieval woodcut of the Ship of Fools, and the leader is taking the participants sort of joyfully over the table and who knows where, and they're still celebrating. One of the participants, and this is the cap of fools that you'll often see in medieval artwork. And the owl, which is a symbol of wisdom, and what's going on there? Is anyone hearing what's being said? And the pear on the flag is used to create the pattern in the background. And it's somewhat enigmatic, but it plays with the still life genre. And this is another close-up of the pattern that you'll see. But I think this is sort of an obvious narrative, kind of playful, sort of funny, and kind of dark, which is kind of the things that you're seeing in all of these works. I think I try to make them beautiful so that they pull you in and you think, oh, that's really beautiful on first glance, and the colors and the design and patterns. And then as you unpack the narrative, you realize how complicated it is. Like living is very complicated. Getting to know someone and all their levels of who they are, and understanding and appreciating each other is very complicated. So I hope that that's what's delivered. You unpack them in stages. And I hope that the beauty pulls you in, and then you're able to move to those next layers and find something that you really connect to, or agree, or respond to, and makes you think. This painting was, I guess, this is one of the last ones too, New Year's Eve pausing. So this starts you back into January. And again, this is the leader rabbit blowing his own trumpet or horn. And in a television screen, you'll often think of New Year's Eve as, the ball dropping and everybody's watching it in the television screen. So I guess you could interpret it as a painting in a frame, but I was thinking more of a television screen, and with the black that you see. I made sure that the proportions were accurate. I'm not sure that really mattered. But the landscape comes from a World War II image of the Battle of Troon, I believe, where the landscape is completely devastated. And this creature is creating that devastation. In the meantime, this is what's really happening. And all of the other rabbits are partying down and drunk and having a good old time and oblivious to what's going on. And the decorations for the hallway are rabbit's feet, which we think of as a lucky token. And although stop and think about it, how did those rabbit's feet come into being? Well, it's a actual rabbit's foot, so that's not such a good scenario for the rabbit, is it? And here's Rabbit and Kitty Boy when they came in. They're coming together, and again, sort of taking a little nod at the viewer. They're in the scene. They're sort of walking through and seeing all of these things going on and thinking, oh my goodness. And the viewer is also in the space of the hall for New Year's Eve pausing. So here we are at St. Patrick's Day Keening. And I have to say, I sometimes wonder the images that I appropriate, if they're appropriate. Like a lot of times in the Through the Veil series, when I was talking about those, I would appropriate images from religious art across nations and continents. And I may not be Hindu, I might not be Buddhist, and so you wonder if that's legitimate for me to appropriate. I decided that it was. And here I'm sort of appropriating leprechauns. And I am Irish in background, so maybe it gives me a little bit of a leeway to play with the leprechaun images. But I was trying to think of ways to show nationalism again, and that sort of similar thinking and valuing the same ideology, and how that can be so dangerous. Here the keening is like in a funeral mourning, and again referring to nature mort and still life, and the rabbits are jumping off the cliff blindly as they're keening away. In the Lucky Shamrock, there's eyes. You know, it's that kind of the person that's pulling all the strings, sort of the wizard behind the in the room, hidden behind the room. And just some other allusions to St. Patrick's Day, and this is just kind of a funny thing, but it does have an interesting slant to it. St. Patrick supposedly chased all the snakes out of Ireland, and here they are rising again and coming back into the painting. I think that's all I have to say about that. And then over here, an earlier one, this is Halloween floating, and the table gets turned on its side. And I was thinking of it as a portal. Halloween is really full of rites of reversal, where you're allowed to do things that you aren't normally allowed to do. Throw corn on people's houses, or wear scary costumes and scare people. And it's allowed. Those kind of rituals, I think, are instilled in all of these works, and what you bring to that holiday and your memories and experiences. But here we go, the portal. It also could be like a casket a little bit. And again, this is the painting that the fabric comes from. These are mums, a seasonal flower. And here are rabbits, all with little masks of other animals on. I found that funny. I think a lot of times I'm just amusing myself when I paint these in a good way. And this rabbit is looking at the viewer, and the hollow eyes of these I think adds to the kind of mystery and maybe a little bit of something scary about them, and the ghost rabbits that are flying around, and the bats. And the moon in the upper left there. I'm in front of Thanksgiving sliding. I was thinking of how the pictures of Norman Rockwell's paintings of all the families sitting around the holidays, everything looks so perfect and happy. And you know, we often have memories like that we can relate to. That's probably why the Norman Rockwell paintings are so popular and were on the Evening Post. But I thought I'd play with that a little bit, and the table is slanted and the turkey is flying off with the rabbits riding it. And where are they riding to? This is again an earlier painting, and sort of creating beauty and mystery, and maybe something just a little bit scary as it's going on in the paintings. And next to that, this was the very last painting in the series. This is Friends Day Hiding, and really influenced by the pandemic, COVID, and wearing masks, and how all you see are the eyes of people, and you're gauging what they're thinking perhaps a bit by their eyes. And I know when I was teaching, I was always so surprised to see what that student looked like when their mask came off, because some people I didn't know beforehand. And you are gauging so much by the emotion in people's eyes to register exactly what they're thinking and saying as a teacher. You know, just as we pass people in the street or are interacting with them at the grocery store. So I think that's sort of taking that into account. And here's Rabbit and Kitty Boy, fast friends, but they're looking a little beat up with their scars and eye patches. But here they are playing the banjo together on the stage of life. But the stage of life, this is the shepherd's hook that will take off in burlesque acts, the ones that weren't good. So the stage of life, you might be pulled off at any minute. We probably were all feeling that way during our first big round of COVID. This painting, this is the last to show you. It was earlier in the series. This is Valentine's Day Exploding, and sort of taking the extreme sense of passion and love and sacrifice, even for Valentine's Day. and you know, kind of a religiously associated holiday that isn't so much anymore. It's more popularized, but maybe inserting some of that back into that with the sacred heart images and the rabbit that's popping out from one space to the other, being shattered, exploding. And then the Valentine's Day heart, I think this was again from a Victorian card, but I think those have such nostalgia to them. I often borrow from those illustrations in these paintings. And then this is my painting that's used to create the background pattern. And when I finished the first series, Through the Veil, I asked my husband, who's a writer and scholar, if he could write about the paintings. So Through the Veil are in the singular adventures of Rabbit and Kitty Boy. And then all of the Holidays Unfolding are in Holidays Unfolding, the continuing adventures of Rabbit and Kitty Boy. And these are written by my husband. Edward S. Lewis is his pen name, but his real name is Edward Risden. And he's a scholar of medieval and Renaissance literature, but also a creative writer, and he's done just a number of things. His website is edwardslewis.com. But I think that pretty much covers all the paintings and gives you the essence of how to look at them, or some keys of how to look at what's in the exhibit. And thank you all for your time, for watching the video.